Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Kano Tryharding Modern. Now, I know what you're saying. Kano, this doesn't look like a Tryharding deck. This looks like a Mad Meta deck. And you might be right. But Esper Control and Blue-White Control are, to some extent, always viable in the metagame, usually. And I think a control deck like this kind of goes against the spirit of what our Mad Meta series is about. So I think this fits better in tryharding a little bit. I'm not that great at playing control decks, but I was requested to play Esper Control recently, so I've decided on this. This is a regular 60-card Esper Control deck that I have scaled up to 80 cards with the intention of adding one thing that might make the deck actually easier for me to play, and that is the Gifts Ungiven package. Now, what is the Gifts Ungiven package, you might ask? The Gifts Ungiven package is basically a 4-mana instant speed, you're gonna win the game combo. And the idea is we play Esper Control, and we have the option of just playing like hard control the entire game. But at any point, we could cast Gifts Ungiven, and Gifts Ungiven says you can search your library for up to 4 cards with different names, reveal them, your opponent chooses 2 of those cards, puts them in the graveyard, and then the rest go into your hand. Because Gifts Ungiven requires you to find cards with some specific criteria, such as them having different names, you are allowed to fail to find when you Gifts Ungiven. So what this effectively means is we can Gifts Ungiven for 2 cards, fail to find, and then our opponent has to put those 2 cards in the grave. So what are our 2 cards we're going to get? We're going to get Iona, Shield of Emeria, which is a 9-mana 7/7 angel that flies, and when it enters the battlefield, we choose a color, and opponents can't cast spells of the chosen color. And we get Unburial Rites, which is a card we can flash back to reanimate a creature spell. Alternatively, versus aggro, we can get Elish Norn to permanently shrink our opponent's board versus like Blitz and stuff like that so that they can't actually have creatures on board, which should allow us to just win. And then the rest of the deck is basically just Esper Control. So we're going to play Control with the Gifts Ungiven Surprise, and that's the reason that I scaled this up to 80 cards, because when I would play a 60-card Gifts deck, frequently I would run into matchups where I would just draw my combo pieces, and unless I'm casting Sea Beyond like we do in Dragonstorm to shuffle those cards back into my deck, which I don't really particularly like in a Control deck, I would much prefer to play a slightly larger deck. And we do this trick all the time in Battle of Wits, and it works there quite frequently, but it will work a lot better in theory in a smaller deck. So we're going to try this, and we're going to see what happens. Hopefully it works. So for our removal, we have Path to Exile and Fatal Push as our removal spells of choice. We also have Drown in the Loch, sort of as a catch-all. We have Thought Scour, so we can actually mill our opponent. Snapcaster Mage to buy any/all of those spells back. We have Force of Negation to kind of help catch our opponent's spells. We have Kaya's Guile as a form of main deck Edict, Grave Hate, Life Gain, just kind of does everything. Esper Charm, which can Mind Rot our opponent at instant speed on their draw step, which is pretty good. It can also be an instant speed Divination, and it does have a side mode of destroying an enchantment, so if our opponent does play Rest in Peace against us or something like that, we can actually answer it and then just Gifts anyway, though we don't need Gifts to win. We can also play like Little Teferi, Big Teferi, and Jace the Mind Sculptor as a way to just kind of grind out the game with Planeswalker value. We have Cryptic Command as a catch-all answer, at least one Supreme Verdict somewhere in the deck, because I couldn't find a way to put multiples in this deck efficiently. Out of the sideboard, we just have a little bit of hate for everything. We can side out removal or answers that we don't need. We can even side out the Gifts Ungiven combo if we really wanted to bring in other stuff. And of course, we're playing Yorion because, as a control deck, if we're just getting into the late game, paying 3 mana and then 5 mana for a 4/5 flyer is probably going to be good enough to do something. So we'll see. I'm going to take this into a constructed league, and we will see how we do. See you guys in round 1. Alrighty, round 1, here we go. We are on the play. I will start by revealing Yorion. We have Godless Shrine, Glacial Fortress, Cantrip. We have Gifts, and we have Snapcaster Mage, so I am going to keep. My opponent also started 7 cards, so it looks like they're going to be playing a burn deck, suspending a Rift Bolt. We untap, we draw to Fairy. I'm going to start Godless Shrine tapped, pass the turn. Next turn, we can Thought Scour plus Fatal Push, potentially. Okay, opponent plays a Swift Spear. Alright, if I had shocked myself, I would have taken the same amount of damage off of Swift Spear. So we're going to play Glacial Fortress, and I think I am just going to go ahead and push now. Pass the turn. Depending on how many cards my opponent plays and how many are left in their hand, I may just Mind Rot my opponent as soon as I untap. They Boros Charm us. I'm going to Thought Scour in response. We mill Boros Charm and Eidolon. Get hit for 4. Get skewered. Down to 5. We untap. We draw to Fairy. So play Polluted Delta. Fetch with Polluted Delta. We'll get an island. I kind of just want to Mind Rot my opponent on their draw step. If they have double Lightning Bolt, we're going to die, but there's not a lot I can do about that. The alternative is just like playing Teferi and draw, so we're going to go for it. Stop on their draw. Target player discards 2 cards. We're dead to Boros Charm. Opponent just dumped Skewer the Critics and Arid Mesa. We untap. We draw Drown in the lock, which is a little bit relieving. Play Flooded Strand, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They draw. If they just play like a Swift Spear or a land here, they lose. Sweet. So fetch up Flooded Strand, get an island. Gifts Ungiven, target my opponent. We get Iona and Unburial Rites. Okay. Untap. Draw Elish Norn. Reanimate Iona. Name Red. And now our opponent is on a 3-turn clock. Nice! That's exactly how we drew it up. So I'm really glad that I added the Gifts Ungiven package to the control list here. That feels really good. I'm going to bring in Kaya's Guile. I may want Celestial Purge / Aether Gust here, because it does kind of answer their stuff without us really taking any damage. So let's take a look at what we're bringing in a pile, and then we'll try and, I guess, make a separate pile. Okay, I think I'm going to drop a Path. Big Teferi seems like a little ambitious, but I don't want to go down completely. I don't think I would go Elish Norn in this matchup. The concern is my opponent brings in like Path for Iona. Although generally if they keep a hand with Path, they're going to end up having a much slower time trying to kill us. Maybe I just cut like Thought Scour. And it's probable I should keep Path, but we're going to try this. Alrighty. We will start by revealing Yorion. This hand is far too slow versus Burn, especially if my opponent kept 7, and they did. We got a mulligan. Alright, I will keep a hand with multiple Fatal Pushes, and I'm going to put back a Glacial Fortress. Opponent starts Inspiring Vantage, passes, we untap, draw Drowned Catacomb, play Hollowed Fountain tapped, pass the turn. Opponent bolts our face, untaps. They play an Inspiring Vantage into an Eidolon, sure. We untap, we draw Unburial Rites, which is really not what we want to happen. Pass the turn. We will probably just be pushing Eidolon here, but I expect my opponent's probably going to play another haste creature or 2. Okay, they do not. They attack us for 2, so we push Eidolon, take 2 damage. Opponent passes, we untap, we draw Flooded Strand, play Drowned Catacomb, pass the turn. Opponent Lightning Helix. Okay. They bolt. Okay, I'm going to make them discard their last 2 cards in hand. Lightning Bolt and Sacred Foundry, so that gained us a couple of life. 3 life, actually. So opponent untaps and draws. They pass, we untap. We draw a Swamp. Play a Swamp. Pass the turn. Actually, I do put Yorion in my hand here. Pass the turn. Okay, opponent plays a Swift Spear. Goes to combat. Attacks, so push Swift Spear. Okay. We untap. Draw Marsh Flats. Play Glacial Fortress, and play Yorion. Okay. Pass the turn. We untap. We draw Iona. Alright. We're almost to, like, hard cast Iona. Only 3 more lands, right? Go to combat. Attack for 4. Man, I would almost Esper Charm myself at this point. This is what we were trying to avoid, was drawing these cards. Opponent has a Boros Charm. We go to 5. They untap. They draw. They play an Inspiring Vantage. Okay, I'm going to crack Marsh Flats. If they got another Boros Charm, we're just dead. Get a Hollowed Fountain. Tapped. We untap. Draw Glacial Fortress. Play Glacial Fortress. Go to combat. Attack for 4. Opponent untaps. They play Roiling Vortex. Whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast that spell, it deals 5 damage to that player. So they can stop us from gaining life, and we're on a 4-turn clock at minimum, and that's if my opponent bricks, drawing only lands. We are dead at any time to a bolt. Play Flooded Strand. Go to combat. Attack our opponent for 4. If we're willing to pay a life, and we draw an untapped land, we can actually hard cast Iona. Alright, opponent untaps, takes a damage, draws a card. They're passing. I'm going to crack the Flooded Strand. We'll get a Godless Shrine tapped. Untap. We take a damage and go to 1. We draw a Snapcaster Mage. So go to combat. Hit our opponent for 4. Take them to 6. Well, we have to Snapcaster Mage Esper Charm to destroy it. To destroy Roiling Vortex. White, black, blue. I mean, and we are presenting lethal, and we have a Drown in the Lock backup, so they need double burn spell to kill us. Boros Charm. Counter the Boros Charm. Then we gotta basically hope they're holding a land and top deck a land. They have the Skullcrack, so they were kind of just slow rolling, trying to make sure that we didn't have an answer. Alright. We'll go into game 3. We will at least be on the play. Probably want Celestial Purge more than Aether Gust. Well, Aether Gust also kind of acts as a counterspell, so I'll drop 1 for 1 Celestial Purge because it can hit Roiling Vortex. I'm not sure how relevant that's going to be, but we'll find out. We drew a lot of lands. I scaled up the lands to be the same number for an 80-card deck as the 60-card deck was running. I don't know if that's correct or not. Well, we have a Force. We can pitch a Gifts. We have 2 lands. We need to draw more lands. I'm going to try keeping this. Obviously, we need to draw black mana. Well, we don't need to, but being able to cast Kaya's Guile would be very nice. Opponent starts Mountain into Goblin Guide. Draw me some lands, Goblin Guide. Thought Scour on top of our deck. Alright. We untap. We draw Thought Scour. Thought Scour our opponent. We draw Cryptic Command. Play a Plains. Pass the turn. Opponent draws. Second Goblin Guide. Alright, we need some lands, Goblin Guides. Opponent attacks. Elesh Norn on top of our deck. That is the exact opposite of what we want to be seeing. So we untap, we draw Elesh Norn, pass the turn. Opponent untaps, they draw. Goblin Guide number 3. They go to combat, they attack. Supreme Verdict on top. Well, flash in Snapcaster to block. The tragedy of drawing no lands. Take 4, go to 10. Alright, pass the turn. I probably should have mulliganed, and this was probably considered a bad keep, but opponent goes to combat. Attacks. Land, please. There's a land. And another land. Alright, now we just need our opponent to cast spells that we can counter here. They suspend a Rift Bolt. Alright, so we know we're not going to get Skull Cracked, at the very least. Untap. We draw Colonnade. We need black mana this turn. So we can make our opponent sack, and we can gain 4 life. I think I've got a Shock Godless Shrine to do this. Okay, opponent bolts our face down to 1. They lose their guy. Okay, we have to discard, so we discard Elesh Norn. They untap Rift Bolt coming off Suspend, which I think we do actually have to force. But they probably have enough burn to just make up for this. Because we're dead to a single Lightning Bolt, and my opponent has 4 cards in hand. So unless they're holding, like, mono Swift Spears or lands, we're probably fine. I mean, we're only fine in that scenario. We're probably dead. Opponent attacks us for 2. Here's all our lands we didn't draw for 3 turns. There's the bolt. Yep. Sad days. We were very close there, but I will see you all in round 2. Alrighty, round 2. We will be on the draw. Reveal Yorion. A little bit awkward on the mana here. Opponent revealed Luris. I think I am going to keep. We're probably going to go for... If this is Luris Burn, the Gifts Ungiven combo for Iona is great. If it's Luris Death Shadow, it's less good, but still probably fine. So opponent starts off shocking a Blood Crypt into a Swift Spear. They play Bauble. They go to combat, hit us for 2. We untap and draw Plains. So we're going to start Colonnade tapped, pass the turn. Opponent cracks Bauble. Plays Bloodstained Mire. Cracks Bloodstained Mire. Gets an Overgrown Tomb. Untapped. Plays a Scourge of the Skyclaves. Alright. They hit us for 1. We go to 17. Untap. They draw a card. We draw a Path. Play Drowned Catacomb. Stop on my opponent's upkeep. Path Scourge. Okay. Opponent gets a Swamp. They Thoughtseize us. They're probably going to take Snapcaster or Drown. They could take Gifts. They take Snapcaster, so we can't just Snap Path. They play another Scourge. So they hit us for 2. We untap and draw Teferi. Well, I kind of like playing Teferi slightly more than the just straight up Drown in the Lock play here. I mean, he's going to die, but he should buy us a little bit of time. We get another Gifts. That's not good. Alright, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They replay Scourge. They have a second Scourge. We need to draw an untapped land, and our opponent can't have Bolt or Temur Battle Rage. So they kill Teferi, we untap, we draw an island. Play an island, pass the turn. The problem is just Unburial Rites Iona doesn't do it. Maybe that means I have to play differently, actually. The thing I like about this list is, other than the giant answers, everything should be playable at instant speed. So opponent goes to combat. They swing out. Thought Scour them. Get a second Drown in the Lock. I mean, if they have Battle Rage, we're dead anyway. Basically through anything. We would have had to have mana for double Drown, and we don't. Okay. Well, the Drown in the Lock resolved. We stand to take 6. It's possible I should have tried to take all of the damage, and then just Esper Charmed at the end of turn to draw cards. To avoid dying to Temur Battle Rage like this. Yeah. Temur Battle Rage and Double Strike in general with Scourge of the Skyclaves is generally a pretty nasty thing. So we go to 1. Opponent plays Tarmogoyf. I think I would need Supreme Verdict. Yep, that doesn't do it. Okay. So versus Jund Death Shadow, I definitely want another path. I think Celestial Purge is in order. Ashiok and Kaya's Guile both have game in this matchup as well. The Iona plan doesn't even really seem that good here. So I think what I'm going to do is board out the Unburial Rites plan. And I think I'm going to drop a Force of Negation. We're going to have to try and win via control here. Gifts Ungiven is just going to be like a big value spell, so it can go get us like a copy of each Planeswalker and Verdict or something like that. Or just a pile of 4 removal spells or 3 removal spells and a Snapcaster Mage. Something like that. And I'm going to drop Colonnade, I think. Try like this. Alright, we'll play first. Reveal Yorion. Well, if we don't get Thoughtseized into Oblivion, this hand is actually pretty decent. We can start by fetching a Godless Shrine, then playing Glacial Fortress to have a Celestial Purge ready to go. Play Flooded Strand, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Plays a Blood Crypt, untapped. Plays a Swift Spear. Crack Flooded Strand. get a Godless Shrine, tapped. Swift Spear resolves and hits us for 1. Okay, we're down to 18. Untap and draw Ashiok. Play Glacial Fortress, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. I'm very interested in purging the Monastery Swift Spear. Opponent cracks Verdant Catacombs. Gets an Overgrown Tomb. Untapped. Plays Renin 6. Alright. Do we purge Renin 6? Or do we purge Swift Spear? Honestly, I think I hit Renin 6. It's true, well, if I hit Monastery Swift Spear, they can't use their fetch lands unless they somehow kill Ashiok. We just don't have another answer for Renin 6. It doesn't get them any value unless they have another, like, kill spell somehow. Which is entirely possible. I'm gonna go for the Swift Spear. I think that helps keep Ashiok alive, because other than Swift Spear, they don't have any hasty threats. And with having Ashiok on 4 after first activation here, they're gonna have trouble killing him with just a bolt. So, mill and exile. Okay, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. We get Thought Seized, so there goes Jace. I suppose if my opponent has Lightning Bolt plus Renin 6 down tick, they can just kill Ashiok. They take Jace, as expected. They down tick Renin 6 to ping Ashiok. So here comes the Lightning Bolt. I mean, if that's the case, they were going to kill Ashiok no matter what, and I should have purged Renin 6, because the repeated damage from the Monastery Swift Spear is probably less backbreaking to us as a control deck than the repeated land buyback that Renin 6 provides. If they have an actual Death Shadow here, that's pretty bad for us. Yep, alright. We untap, we draw an island, play an island, and I guess I'm gonna Verdict. I hate using Verdict as a 1-for-1 spell here. I could have not down-ticked Ashiok, but maybe that's what I needed to do if I was going to actually take the line that I selected. The problem now is my opponent is eventually going to get to Luris and then just replay Ashiok, or not Ashiok, Death Shadow. So they crack Verdant Catacombs, they go down to 9. They get a Stomping Ground untapped and go to 7. Okay, they put Luris into their hand. And they play Nile Spellbomb. Okay. We untap. We draw another Celestial Purge. Problem is now I think I have to purge Luris, but if they play Luris, they're going to get Shadow. So we'll play Flooded Strand and put Yorion in her hand. Pass the turn. Opponent picks up Verdant Catacombs. Plays Verdant Catacombs. Cracks it. Gets a Swamp. We get Inquisitioned. So we're being forced to Celestial Purge. Get a basic Plains. Purge Renin 6. Okay. Inquisition whiffs, but my opponent has exactly the mana to play Luris and then play Death Shadow. We really need to draw, like, Esper Charm and then hit, like, double removal here. Like Path or something like that. Okay. Opponent replays Death Shadow. We untap. Draw Cryptic Command. So, Shock Hollowed Fountain. Pass the turn. We're going to Cryptic, probably tap and draw. If I had fetched another basic island, I could have avoided the shock there, but... Okay, opponent plays a land. And they go to combat. Tap the team and draw. We get another Cryptic. It buys us a little more time unless they have a Thought Seize. Okay, they're going to shock us and force us to discard. We'll discard Yorion. Do they have another Kolaghan's Command? That's pretty good if they do. Yep, there goes our other Cryptic. Alright, we untap. We draw a Thought Scour. Thought Scour our opponent. We get to Fairy. Play to Fairy. Unsummon Death Shadow. We get Drown in the lock, but we can't cast it. Does that mean I tapped incorrectly? I think that means I tapped incorrectly. I should have left up, like, Godless Shrine Hollowed Fountain. I could have actually protected Teferi, but that does mean my opponent will get to... Had I tapped correctly, I could have killed Luris, and then they wouldn't just have a Tarmogoyf this turn. They Tarfire Teferi, so he was dying regardless. They play Death Shadow. I think the major issue here is we only have one Supreme Verdict in the deck. The original Esper Control deck did two. Like, it only had one as well, is what I was trying to say. And instead of increasing that, the board wipes, I added the Gifts package, which isn't good in this matchup. We untap, we draw Ashiok. I can play Ashiok. Drown in the lock, Death Shadow. Mill in Exile. But I don't actually think this is going to shrink Goyf all that much, because we have too many cards in our grave. Yeah, we're still dead. Alrighty. So I technically could have survived that game, but I don't think I was favored to win the match. I'll see you guys in round 3. Alright. We are playing against another Luris deck. We have all tap lands, no cheap spells. I think I'm going to mulligan that hand. Oof. I don't really want to pitch Force, or pitch Gifts Ungiven to Force, but I think I gotta keep this hand. Hopefully we draw, like, some paths and stuff. When it starts Marsh Flats, gets a Blood Crypt. Plays a Bombat Courier. And a Bauble. Cracks Bauble. I'm going to start Colonnade, basically, unless I top deck Fatal Push. We untap, they draw a card. We draw Drown in the lock, so play Celestial Colonnade, pass the turn. We'll leave up Force, pitching Drown. But it plays a second Blood Crypt untapped. Thoughtseize. You know what? I don't want my opponent to know. I guess if they just have another Thoughtseize, we're out all of our cards, but Inquisition wouldn't do it. It'd have to be a Thoughtseize. Okay. Opponent hits us for 1. Then bolts our face. We untap. Draw Thought Scour. Thought Scour our opponent. We draw Teferi. Play Glacial Fortress, tapped. Opponent untaps. Plays a Blood Crypt, untapped. Hits us for 1. Exiles another card. We go to 14, and they pass. We draw Drowned Catacomb, so play an island. Put Yorion in our hand, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Kolaghan's Command, they're going to make us discard and do 2 damage to us. I'm going to discard Yorion. That should confuse them. They hit us for 1. 4 cards under that courier now. We draw Force. Play Drowned Catacomb, pass the turn. And I think we're going to go for Iona, naming black. Alright, second Bombat Courier. They go to combat. I could name red to get rid of, like, Lightning Bolt and stuff, but I'd rather them actually not cast their threats. Okay, we go to 9. On my opponent's end step, Gifts Ungiven. On Burial Rites, Iona. We untap, draw Drown in the lock, play a Swamp, on Burial Rites, targeting Iona. Name black. Pass the turn. We do have Force of Negation if our opponent does anything real scary. Like if they have 3 lightning bolts to kill Iona, we can counter the 3rd one. Okay, they play a Swift Spear. They go to combat. Attack with everybody. They exile some cards. Block Swift Spear. Okay, we take 2 and go to 7. My opponent can draw a whole new hand. We untap. Draw Esper Charm. Go to combat. Attack our opponent for 7. They go to 6. Play Teferi. Uptick Teferi. Draw Snapcaster. Then we will untap Celestial Colonnade and Drowned Catacomb. Pass the turn. Opponent going to dump all of the cards from Baumat Courier into their hand. The smaller of the 2 Baumat Couriers. I think they're just like fishing for bolts. If my opponent tries to bolt on their end step, I would drown in the lock their Baumat Courier. They play Verdant. They play another Courier. Alright, they go to combat. They can attack us down to 5, but they still need to have double Lightning Bolt to kill us, and we have Force plus Drown, so I'm not too worried. Okay, we go to 5. Okay, they sack the Massive Courier and draw 7 cards. They sack the other Courier to try and draw a card, and they scoop. Apparently Iona on black is very good versus just Rakdos Death Shadow. So we're bringing in 2 Purges and a Path. I'm going to go down Elish Norn, 1 Teferi, a Force. I'm also bringing in a Kaya's Guile, I think over a Colonnade. Try it like this. Reveal Yorion. Alright. I think I can work with this. It's not amazing, though. Opponent did mulligan to 6. Looks like they're thinking about mulliganing to 5. They start with 6 cards in hand. Marsh Flats. Crack Marsh Flats. They get a Blood Crypt. Thoughtseize. I'm going to force this. And I'm going to pitch Snapcaster Mage. I probably should have pitched Cryptic, but plain and simple, I didn't want to. Start Polluted Delta. Fetch up a basic island. Thought Scour my opponent. We draw another Thought Scour, pass the turn. Okay, opponent has a second Thoughtseize. They probably take Purge here. We untap. Draw Colonnade. Start by Thought Scouring. Play Colonnade. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They find a second Blood Crypt. They play a Swift Spear and a Swift Spear. They hit us for 2. We untap. Draw on Burial Rites. Play Drowned Catacomb. And I don't think I want to Snapcaster for Thought Scour, so I'm going to put Yorion in my hand. Pass the turn. I'll probably end up Snapcaster Mage for Celestial Purge, or hold up Cryptic. One of those 2. Okay, opponent plays a Kroxa. I'm going to discard on Burial Rites. Opponent sacks Kroxa. Goes to combat, attacks us for 2. We untap. Draw Celestial Purge. Shock Godless Shrine, go to 13. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play Bauble. Alright. They sack Bauble, looking at our top card. They go to combat. And attack. So we're going to flash in Snapcaster to block. And then flashback Celestial Purge. Okay, so we don't end up taking any damage. We untap, opponent draws. We draw Path. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play a Bloodstained Mire. They crack it. They shock. They're going to Thoughtseize us. I'm going to counter this and draw. I think we should be fine actually taking a hit from Swift Spear here. Provided they don't have, like, Bolt, that would be bad. Take 2, go to 11. They have a Death Shadow. We untap. Draw an island. Play Polluted Delta. Pass to our opponent's turn. This might be an Unburial Rites Snapcaster to get a flashback path, which is going to be interesting. Okay, opponent casts a Knight's Whisper. They're going to lose some life and draw some cards. Presumably looking for a 4th land so that they can cast Kroxa. Alright, they go to combat. Attack. So let's Purge Death Shadow. And Path Swift Spear. This does give them their 4th land for Kroxa. Crack Polluted Delta. Get a Hollowed Fountain. Tapped. We untap. Draw Flooded Strand. If my opponent's reanimating Kroxa next turn, I think the plan is animate Colonnade and attack here. We want Yorion to be able to discard, and we want to force our opponent to have like a Fatal Push or something. And if they just reanimate Kroxa without another land and Fatal Push, or if they don't have Fatal Push right here, they're going to lose to Colonnade. Are they just replaying Kroxa? Opponent has suddenly found the ability to do math. Or remembered, I shouldn't say found. They cast Knight's Whisper and go to 2. And we got him! Alright, see you guys in round 4. Alrighty, round 4, here we go. I would like to play first. We will reveal Yorion. I mean, this has been one of our better openers, so I'm going to keep. Start by playing Colonnade tapped, pass the turn. Opponent untaps and shocks Hollowed Fountain. We will play a Plains, pass the turn. Opponent opts, sure. On our opponent's end step, let's Thought Scour them. Mill 2 islands. Untap. Draw Drowned Catacomb. Well, if it came in untapped this turn, I would play Drowned Catacomb. However, it does not. So I'm just going to play an island. Pass the turn. Opponent plays a Flooded Strand. So on their end step, I'm going to Snapcaster Thought Scour. They mana leak us, that's fine. We untap, draw Force, play Drowned Catacomb, pass the turn. Opponent cracks Flooded Strand, or Hollowed Fountain tapped. They play a Scalding Tarn, and they pass. We untap, draw Gifts, play Hollowed Fountain, tapped, pass the turn. Opponent Archmage's Charm to draw cards, sure. They untap. And they play Field. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to Gifts for like a pile of Planeswalkers. And I will protect this with Force. It is sad that I have to discard Esper Charm to do that. Logic Knot X1. Well, Force Logic Knot. They crack Scalding Tarn for an island. And they hardcast Force on our Force. Alright. So we untap. Draw Glacial Fortress. Play Glacial Fortress. Let's exile our opponent's grave, make a 1/1, doing this on our turn while they're tapped out, and put Yorion in our hand. Pass the turn. Opponent plays a Glacial Fortress, we untap, draw Drown in the lock, go to combat. Attack for 1. We would draw Drown in the lock right after exiling our opponent's grave. Okay. Pass the turn. They're going to Archmage Charm to draw 2 cards, sure. And they are going to field our Colonnade. Get a Swamp. Opponent untaps. And they pass. We untap. Draw Flooded Strand. Play Flooded Strand. Go to combat. Attack them for 1. Pass the turn. They are going to Vendilion Click themselves. Pitching Supreme Verdict. Okay, I'm going to Path Click. Is that all of their Archmage's charms? No, that's just Archmage's charm number 3. Alright. They untap. Play Flooded Strand. Play Jace. Unfortunately, we can't drown and lock them. Brainstorm. I think this means we've lost. I probably should have just let that Gifts Ungiven get countered. And then, like, tried to Esper Charm later to draw cards. Counter Teferi. Okay. Crack Flooded Strand. Man, how crazy would it be if we drew Elishnorn and it resolved and we killed Teferi by attacking with a 3/3 Spirit? It's not what happened, but how crazy would it have been? Go to combat. Hit Jace for 1. Play around Mystical Dispute randomly. Play Yorion. No flicker. Opponent fetches up a Plains for a Path. Get an island. Okay. Opponent untaps. That's going to be the game. Alright, I definitely played this one incorrectly. So versus control, I want Dovin's Veto, Ashiox, probably actually Thoughtseize, Mystical Dispute, Kaya's Guile. I'm going to cut... Actually, Push is better than Path. I'm going to cut Paths entirely. I'm going to cut Elishnorn. Although just having like another random 7-drop to potentially draw could be good. I think it's still probably worth cutting. We don't need Supreme Verdict. We can probably cut 1 land. And a Cryptic. Try it like this. I would like to play first. Still reveal Yorion. Mono Planeswalker is the hand. I don't think it's good enough, but like it could be hilariously good enough. You know what? I'm gonna keep it. Like if we just resolve 3 mana Teferi, we're probably going to win. Play Flooded Strand, pass the turn. Opponent starts Hollowed Fountain tapped. Fetch with Flooded Strand, get Hollowed Fountain. We untap and draw Drowned Catacomb. Play Drowned Catacomb, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Plays an island. Just tap out for Rest in Peace, dude. We draw Iona. I mean... We know they got the counter. Pass the turn. Opponent plays a Scalding Tarn. We untap. Draw Flooded Strand. Shock Watery Grave. Play Jace. They force Jace. Pass the turn. They play Colonnade. We untap. Draw Plains. Play Jace. Force Negation. Play Flooded Strand. Pass the turn. They play their own Jace. They Brainstorm. They play Flooded Strand. So we're going to have to try and play our Teferi and tuck their Jace. Problem is they have Colonnade. We untap. Draw Teferi Time Raveler. Alright. Play Teferi Time Raveler, so we can play around Mystical Dispute. Uptick him to 5, so he survives Colonnade hit. Pass the turn. Opponent Brainstorms. They play a Glacial. Play Big Teferi. Tuck Little Teferi. We untap. Draw gifts. Play our Teferi. Opponent cracks Flooded Strand. Probably for a Mystical Dispute. Yeah, I'm not going to play this out. I know this is tryharding. I'm not going to beat an opponent with 2 active Planeswalkers. Alright, I'll see you guys in round 5. Alright, we choose to play first. We reveal Yorion. If this hand had white mana, it'd be very good. I think we keep. I mean, the odds that we draw white mana is pretty high. No companion for our opponent. Start Watery Grave tapped. Pass the turn. Opponent plays an island. Then passes. We untap. Draw a Thought Scour. Play Drowned Catacomb. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play a Polluted Delta. Alright, let's Thought Scour them for information. They're some kind of blue-red deck. We draw Esper Charm. Play Polluted Delta. Pass the turn. If my opponent does nothing, I will probably Esper Charm, draw cards on their end step. Okay. They fetch Polluted Delta. They get a Blood Crypt. So they're Grixis. They untap. They play Creeping Tar Pit. So on their end step, fetch Polluted Delta. Get a Hallowed Fountain. Untapped. Draw mode. We draw a Colonnade Fatal Push. Untap. Draw an island. Play Colonnade. Pass the turn. We have Drown in the Lock plus Path, or Drown in the Lock plus Push. We're going to wait until next turn to cast a Fairy, because then we can have Drown in the Lock backup. Okay. Opponent plays a Swamp into a Delver. Interesting. Alright. Push. We untap. Draw Jace. Play an island. Play Scary Teferi. They go for the Remand. We drown Remand in the Lock. Teferi resolves. Uptick Teferi to 5. Pass the turn. This way, even if they start, like, activating Creeping Tar Pit to try and kill Teferi, like, we have another Teferi. The plan right now is to play Jace and leave up Path. Probably Fate Seal ourselves once. Are they doing nothing? They realize they can't cast anything on our turn, right? We draw Glacial. Play Glacial. Play Jace. Fate Seal ourselves. The only way I would down tick here is if the top card of my deck was Drown in the Lock, I think. Opponent is paying costs. They're going to cycle Nimble Obstructionist. We don't get to know the top card of our own library. You got it. I dig it. I love the Bird Wizard. This is one of my favorite cards. Good old Stifle Bird. It's good versus fetch lands. It's kind of bad versus Teferi and Jace. Alright. They get to cycle. Uptick Teferi. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They draw a card. They opt. Shock Watery Grave. This the animate Creeping Tar Pit? Could be Delve Out a Threat. They Lightning Bolt Teferi. Sure. They play another opt. We could Path Angler, but I kind of want to save Path for Tar Pit. So untap. Draw Big Teferi. I can get behind this. Unsummon Gurmag. Uptick Time Raveler. Play an island. Play the thickest Teferi. Well, I mean, there is a 6-mana Teferi, so I guess this isn't the thickest one, but game's over. Alright, so versus Delver, we want Path. We want Kaya's Guile. We probably want Ashiok's Mystical Dispute, maybe even Dovin's Veto. And honestly, probably Thoughtseize. What don't we want here? Cryptic is going to be hard to resolve versus them. I'm actually going to cut a Force of Negation. Elish Norn, probably not very good. Cutting a land, I think, is fine. Jace Mind Sculptor is not excessively good versus them. Maybe we don't need the Ashioks. The only reason Jace isn't necessarily good is because they run Lightning Bolt. And generally, Mind Sculptor is not very good versus Lightning Bolt, because when you play him, you want to Brainstorm 99 times out of 100. And if you still play him in this matchup, you generally have to, like, Fate Seal unless you have plenty of protection to keep him alive. Alright, reveal Yorion. This hand, not keepable at all. Much better, this one. We'll keep. I don't really want to put back Teferi, but I also don't want to put back a land or gifts. I mean, I guess gifts isn't super good, so I'll put back gifts. Ideal top deck here, I think, is Thoughtseize. Opponent starts Bloodstained Mire. Cracks Bloodstained Mire. Steam Vents, Blood Crypt, or Watery Grave. Which will it be? Watery Grave. Delver? Delver! Alright, we untap. Draw Drown in the lock. Start Colonnade. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Delver reveals Thought Scour. They shock us Steam Vents. They hit us for 3. We go to 17. They play another Delver. Okay. We draw a Swamp. Play Marsh Flats. The reason we're playing Marsh Flats is because our opponent is playing Stiflebird. Stop on my opponent's upkeep. We'll see what Delver reveals, if anything. Opponent Thought Scours us, milling Supreme Verdict and Esper Charm. Okay. On their upkeep, Delver flips, revealing Thought Scour. Fetch with Marsh Flats. Do they have Squelch? Are they main decking or I guess sideboarding potentially Squelch? No, they must have Stiflebird. So we want Godless Shrine here. Drown Insectile Aberration. We're probably taking 6 here, because they probably have a counterspell for Drown. They have Spell Snare. Okay, they play a Swamp, hit us for 6, we go to 8. We do have to rely on Teferi Unsummon here, which is not super likely because my opponent is representing counter mana. Could even be Drown in the lock. Wouldn't doubt it if it's Grixis. Opponent Thought Scours us, milling Big Teferi, and a Thought Scour. We untap, draw Polluted Delta, play Drowned Catacomb, play Teferi, unsummon Delver. We need to draw, like, Fatal Push or Path, I think. More land is not what we want. Opponent untaps. If they have red land, double bolt, we're dead. There's a Blood Crypt. Untapped. They go to combat. They kill Teferi, so we're not dead to double bolt, thankfully. Whoa. Opponent replays Delver of Secrets. We untap. Draw a Snapcaster. Play a Swamp. Play Teferi. Opponent is going to flash in Snapcaster, targeting nothing. Well, targeting Thought Scour, but they can't cast Thought Scour. Unsummon Insectile Aberration. Still no 1-mana removal spell. Rip. Pass the turn. Unfortunately, we will not be able to Snapcaster Supreme Verdict on time. I don't think, anyway. Opponent plays Polluted Delta. Goes to combat. Kills Teferi. Gonna hit us for 2. Oh, they're swinging all out at Teferi. Okay. Well, Teferi down. Opponent cracks Polluted Delta for an island. They play Delver. 2 cards left in hand. We untap. Draw Drown in the lock. Play an island. Pass the turn. If my opponent flips their Delvers, we're just dead. We might be just dead if they have a Bolt as well. They opt. They're going to Snapcaster Mage. Probably for a Thought Scour or an Opt. They're opting. Well, they're targeting Opt, but they can't cast it. Okay, opponent untaps. They reveal Lightning Bolt. Yeah, we're dead. we needed like Fatal Push, Snap Fatal Push to survive a Lightning Bolt. Yeah, no adjustments, we'll run it back. Alright, we'll play first. Reveal Yorion. Seems good. We will keep. Start Flooded Strand. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They did mull to 6. And I would Mystical Dispute at turn 1 Delver. They fetch up a Steam Vents and Shock. They play Delver. Fetch Flooded Strand. Get a Hollowed Fountain. Untapped. Dispute Delver mystically. We untap. Draw Esper Charm. Play Godless Shrine tapped. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play Bloodstained Mire. They play Delver number 2. We untap. Draw Big Teferi. Play an island. Play Little Teferi. I really hope they don't have Spell Pierce or Mystical Dispute. They're fetching Bloodstained Mire. For Steam Vents tapped. Bounce Delver. Draw Path. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They shock Watery Grave. Bolt Teferi. And they're leaving up 2 lands. We untap. Draw Fatal Push. Alright, pass the turn. We have 2 1-mana removal spells, 1 3-mana removal spell, and several card advantage spells. They're going to Thought Scour us, sure. Hit Path and Thoughtseize. I think if they're playing Gurmag Angler, they should probably be Thought Scouring themselves. They play a Field of Ruin. Do a Delver. Alright. Now they are passing. I'm going to try to make them sack, and we'll gain 4 life. This should bait a counter if they've got it. And this may open us up to Esper Charm to draw cards on our own turn, hitting a land, and then either Path or Fatal Push, depending on which that is. We get negated. Untap. We draw. Verdict. Alright, draw cards mode. That's not good. Pass the turn. The good news is my opponent is almost out of resources. Oh, maybe I should have just Esper Charm to make them discard their last 2 cards. That may have been better than drawing cards there. I guess we'll find out. Second Delver. They didn't even flip the first. Any untapped land gets us a 2-for-1 in Supreme Verdict. They hit us for 1. We go to 16. We untap. We draw Path. Alright, pass the turn. We are going to discard a 5-mana Teferi. Okay, let's see what they reveal off the first Delver before we cast anything. They don't reveal anything. They could activate Field in response, and it looks like they're going to. Fatal Push here. Path here. Field resolves. And I'm going to get a Swamp. Opponent chose to reveal Serum Visions. Okay. I don't know why they would, but we untap and draw. Dovin's Veto. Could really do with a land, honestly. Pass the turn. So opponent is representing the fact that they have a 2-mana counterspell. They may not. Opponent casts Serum Visions. Well, we're not protecting anything with Dovin's Veto for a while, so I think I am actually going to counter it. Would really, really love a land. It's only turn 8. Land, thank you, finally. Shock Hollowed Fountain. Pass the turn. I may just Gifts Ungiven for 4 lands, honestly. They're going to pick up Delver and force us to discard. In response... Gifts Ungiven. I think I am just going to go for the Unburial Rites Iona pile. Okay. They're going to force us to discard, so I'm going to discard, I think, my other Gifts Ungiven. They shouldn't have any hard removal spells, I think, other than maybe Drown in the Loch. And if they do, so they're going to duress us. We have Path, Verdict. They take Verdict. And they're passing. We untap. Nope, they're going to play Delver. Okay. We untap. If we draw a land, we're going to cast Teferi. If we don't, we'll Unburial Rites. Kaya's Guile. I think I am going to go for the Unburial Rites still. And just call the 2-mana counter bluff. They mana leak, so they did have it. Okay. That's fine. Pass the turn. We do have 2 removal spells that can answer a Delver. They untap. They do not reveal. They hit us for 1. We untap. Draw Colonnade. Play Colonnade. Pass the turn. Leave up our instant speed spells. I've got a feeling that my opponent might have another Kolaghan's Command, or they may like try to Snapcaster for Kolaghan's Command. Okay. Opponent untaps. See what Delver reveals, if anything. Nope. Okay. Opponent goes to combat. Attacks us for 1. Sure. Take 1. Down to 12. Okay, on their end step, we're going to make them sack and then exile all the cards from their grave. Okay. That works. We untap. Draw Jace. So attempt to play Jace. This plays around a counterspell better because then we have Path. Fate Seal ourself. Gifts Ungiven. Yeah, I don't think we need a Gifts Ungiven. Alright, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They draw a card. And scoop. Alrighty. Well, I want to reiterate that I am not a good control player. I like jank control I'm a little better with, and a control deck like this that does have a sort of end the game combo in the form of Gifts Ungiven. I'm a little better at playing because I know kind of the end state that I should be maneuvering towards usually, and the more likely ways that we're going to get there. But I'm not very good at playing decks like this, so I know you guys are probably going to have some pretty harsh critiques. I would have some pretty harsh critiques if I were to rewatch this league. I think, honestly, we could probably cut down to 32 lands, probably run a third Fatal Push, maybe even a couple more card advantage spells if we're playing 80 cards. I do like Gifts Ungiven. I think the Gifts Ungiven on Burial Rites combo does have a place somewhere in the modern metagame. Iona is very, very strong, as you saw, versus Burn. It just basically ends the game on the spot. In Game 1. Game 2, they can probably side in Path if they're Boros. But there were a few different matches that felt winnable. We just didn't get there. I had a lot of questionable keeps this league, but I'm not really sure what I should be doing, if that makes sense. I've never played Esper Control before, not in any real metagame form. So let me know how you guys would build this list. I don't plan on playing Control again for a while, and probably not Esper if I do. So, either way, let me know what you guys think about this one. If you like this video and you want to see more, please leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel if you were so inclined. It would mean the world to me if you did. We're at 823 subscribers as of the writing of this video. Or writing, as of the recording of this video. So we're super close to monetization. Only about 177 more subscribers to go. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I want you to know that you're all wonderful human beings. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!